when he was willing to speak here, I decided we've got to do a custom bio for him. And so I created a biography for him. I'm sure he'll be very thankful for this. I expect that in your future talks, that this will be your biography you send to everybody. All right? So once upon a time, on the only historic day in Canada, Jerod Brennen was born in the second ever recorded incident of immaculate conception. As a 7-foot Mountie with size 34 feet, hair, and a beard of red gold, a young Jerod was bound for athletic greatness. Despite a #1 world ranking in synchronized swimming and the love of every Canadian woman, Brennen took the greatest show in water to Washington on a knitting scholarship. Jerod quickly excelled, leading the Pac-10 in GPA and SCARs. After 4 successful seasons as a Husky, he was taken in the second round of the NBA draft by the Cavaliers, but declined, saying his knitting days were over. Following his brief but spectacular knitting career, Brennen went on to dominate a new sport, penetration testing. His large feet are legendary on the conference tour, consisting entirely of 40-year-old men who still live with their parents. In presentations, the crowds follow him, cheering on the man they call Big Commodore 64. To this day, Brennen is considered by most to be the most talented knitting player in history. Even Dave Kennedy was quoted saying, "Jay Brennen taught me everything I know. That dude is the truth." It was a Mad Lib biography generator and that I just customized with a couple of things for penetration testing. But seriously, Jerod is CTO and Principal Security Consultant at Cicadas. He speaks internationally for MIS and other organizations. Phenomenal guy, really cool presentation materials. He's a filmmaker, martial artist, so he will beat us up if we talk too bad about him. Musician, gamer, and social media junkie, as well as being a husband, father, and writer. He's been in IT for a while. We've had him out to speak before, and it's always been phenomenal, so I do appreciate him coming out. So give him a warm welcome.
So before I dive into the presentation, let me bring this up. I actually want to take apart a couple of Android apps today. I'll show you how to pull apps down from Google Play, put them on your Android device, and then get them over to a machine where you can take them apart. Do you have any apps you want me to take a look at? I'll put the game question out there. Who plays 2048? Say, come on.
I played Threes. Come on, man.
What's Threes?
It's the original version, I think.
I got it.
It's the same concept, but the Threes are the number.
Play 2048?
No, I've already got a disassembled APK Talk Messenger.
For which? The
Talk Messenger?
I don't need it today. I appreciate the offer. I wanted to start with one that hasn't been taken apart, but I may want to catch you actually shortly after we wrap up. I have to be careful too because I don't want to piss anybody off. I don't know if I don't want to pull up an app for a company you work for. I'll put it that way. Not here yet.
How about my bank's mobile app? How about a bank's, not my bank?
A bank, and I like that much better.
Bank of America.
Search results. Version 4. Let's pull that down. That's tiny, perfect. Where's my download button, guys?
Down
there it was. Got it. Perfect. Let that download. Dive in. So this is part 2, right? Because the second one's always better than the first. Godfather, Empire Strikes Back. I did a presentation I put together based on some research and some work I was doing at Cicadas. We do a lot of security assessment, vulnerability management work. We also do penetration tests as a part of that progression. And at some point, I decided that attacking mobile apps should be in scope for our clients because when you attack a mobile application, you're not actually interacting directly with a client system, right? They put an app out on the App Store, you pull the app down, it arguably could fall in the category of open source intelligence gathering, right, OSINT, because you do all the analysis offline against the app, and they don't have any technology that's going to detect what you're doing, right? No logging monitoring, no security information event management. When you're playing with the app, what you find is fair game. What I mentioned right before we started the talk is that organizations are pressured to have an app in the App Store, in an App Store, even if they don't have developers in-house who know mobile app dev, which, how many folks, movie buffs, right? Armageddon? Right, let's go back. Armageddon. Steve Buscemi has a beautiful line in it when they're getting ready to take off into space in this shuttle. He looks at the guy beside him and says, "You do realize it's something effective. You realize we're about to launch into outer space on tons of explosives and equipment that were put together by the lowest bidder." That's app dev for your corporate apps that are going out to the store, right? Whoever's got the most competitive contract, which I guarantee doesn't have a security clause in it, that says if this app is insecure, we're going to get our money back, or you'll go back and redo it. So these apps end up in the App Store, and then organizations and security researchers, like orgs in the InfoSec space, will actually go out and do the analysis of how bad things are really. Via Forensics out of Chicago, I don't know if you know Andrew Hoog, these guys, absolutely terrific. If you're doing anything in the AppSec space in mobile, even some mobile, like they've got a great mobile forensics tool they put together. Go out to the Via Forensics site and pull down some of the resources they have available. At one point, they had a project called AF Watchdog, or just Watchdog, something to that effect. Prior to the game Watch Dogs, it's set in Chicago. Sorry, I just put those together. They were taking apps down from different app stores, taking them apart, and then publishing the, I don't want to say the weaknesses, but in general terms, they were identifying the apps that didn't do things well, right? So if an app locally cached a password in plain text, they called it out. If an app sent data between the app and the server over HTTP versus HTTPS, they called them out. The project's not online anymore, so I think they got called out by the companies one too many times. But they did come up with a resource that is absolutely invaluable to your developers, your mobile app developers, and you as security professionals, and it's free. So I'll talk about that. Yes?
What was the name again?
Via Forensics, VIA, Forensics, all one word. But I'll come back to that. The part one version of this this talk, I kept it kind of high level, not a lot of hands-on. I wasn't actually breaking apps during the presentation. This is the fun one. The old one is online at my SlideShare account that you can go out and pull it down. Also, if you just want to reach out to me on Twitter, LinkedIn, drop me an email. I'll send you a copy of the slides if you wanted to go through them. What I wanted to do today is just a quick recap of that presentation, the first one, the high points. Go through attacking apps. I wanted to show you some controls you can put in place at your organization, whether it's in your SD or SDLC, right? Your app dev process, if you have an SDLC. Before the apps actually go live, some vetting that you can do to ensure that everything's cool. Or ideally, language you can put in contracts or expectations you can put in contracts so that when anybody in your marketing department, right, they go out and they hire a third party to develop your apps, you can at least hold them to your security expectations. And then anybody who's seen one of my presentations, I went to school to be a music teacher. Teaching is just part of what I dig. I put resources at the very end because I fully expect that you want to go out and do something on your own after. So anything that I found useful, either in my own learning or in putting a presentation together, I put links out that you can chase that down on your own. That's the picture from the SlideShare if you're looking for it. First step in mobile app security, it's no different than doing regular InfoSec, right? Whether you're hardening systems or making sure the firewall's locked down or making sure that people aren't clicking on links they shouldn't be clicking on. You have to understand your environment. My corporate experience, I spent 5 years at American Electric Power, and then I jumped over to Abercrombie and Fitch for 4 years. I don't know of two environments that could be more diametrically opposed to one another. At AEP, Critical National Infrastructure, a lot of former military members were serving like in InfoSec roles. There was a very, very clear command structure, and you did not argue with your superior, right? The guy I worked for, Jerod, ex-Navy SEAL, head taller than me, broad shoulders, wore tight black t-shirts to work every day because screw the dress code. Smoked about 2 packs a day, so he had a real deep, gravelly voice. And he used his physical presence as a security control. When people asked him to do something, he would intimidate just by who he was, and eventually people stopped asking. And as a result, I mean, as somebody who gets their electricity from the EP, I was kind of grateful for controls we had in place. When I went to Abercrombie, I remember having a conversation with the director of infrastructure at the time. I found out that we weren't patching Windows servers. I thought, that's a softball, right? We'll turn patching on. So in a conversation with him, I said, yeah, I did some vulnerability scanning, found some gaps. I think we should start patching our Windows servers. And he thought for a second, said, no, we're not going to do that. So I've learned that just because you learn security in one organization, or you go out to some sort of leading practice, best practice, right? Look at all the NIST docs and say, well, this is how we're going to do security. When you get into your organization, you're going to find that's not always the case. You have to adjust for your environment. As you drill down into mobile app development, a few key questions that you're going to want to ask. What development technologies or development methodologies do we follow? The traditional waterfall approach is less and less common. People love Agile because you move quickly. Integrating AppSec into Agile is a lot more challenging than your traditional kind of gate approach where you could step in and say, we're going to do a security review before we make changes to the app and then take it to the next phase of the project. So you have to understand, how do we do development? And if you're, again, outsourcing development, you have to put some kind of language in the contract or set up even a 15-minute phone call, guys, with the person who's going to be doing the development to ask them from design to deployment, what steps do they follow and where do they check for security gaps? What programming languages do we use is, in my opinion, even more important in the mobile AppSec space, because if I'm writing a native app for Android, chances are I'm writing straight Java, right? This is how that started. If I'm writing iOS was, what was it, Cocoa? It's Swift now, which is kind of a JavaScript-y language, feels like JavaScript. And I'm sure people write for other platforms, but those are the two that scare me the most because the prevalence of the mobile devices. I was doing I think it was a class overseas on mobile security, and it was an in-house training class. So I thought it'll be fun for me to pull their mobile app down from the App Store and show them what we can get to during the class. And I opened the app up, and there's a folder, I'll show you these in a bit, called Assets, and I go into the Assets folder, and it's full of DLL files. I'm on I think I was on an iOS device. They had both, but why in the hell would I have DLLs on an iOS device? And I didn't have an answer. I was totally caught off guard. Well, in doing some client work at Jacatus, I came across something very similar. And as I dug deeper, because in the client gig I had more time to actually dig into details, I found out that in the mobile app space, developers will go to these third-party tools. Xamarin is a popular one, Xamarin. PhoneGap is another. It's not Titanium. Excel. I think I've got some of the names here toward the end. But when you as a third-party shop are trying to be competitive, and someone says, I need you to write an application for us that's both iOS and Android, you can either sit down and write 2 separate apps in 2 different programming languages, or you can go to Xamarin and you can write the app once in .NET and then just export it to multiple platforms. It makes perfect financial sense for any company doing this. Well, there's a tool that I use called JetPeek. It's a DLL, just a simple decompiler. It's a Windows app. You pull the DLLs in and you say, show me the source code, and it shows you the source code. So everything that the developers are publishing out there when they're using apps like Xamarin are susceptible to a very simple reversal attack. And I'm not talking like advanced decompiling. I'm talking a simple next finish, and I've got your source code. So understanding the programming languages, you have to understand exactly how the mobile app developers are creating these apps so that you can understand what exposures may be inherent in that. What risk and security frameworks do we follow is another important area, because as you're taking this stuff back, if your risk management department or your IT risk manager, whoever is managing risk, right, whoever's got that as their key responsibility, they're going to be looking at a lot across the enterprise. And some of the things they're going to be looking at maybe physical safety. They may be looking at like disaster recovery and business continuity. We're talking millions of dollars in some cases. And if you bring them a concern that you can get the source code in the mobile app, it's important for you to be able to speak their language to help them understand where this fits into what they're already managing. Because if you just run in waving your arms saying people can get to our source code, but you can't articulate it in that risk management language, then it's likely to fall by the wayside while they focus on the things that they already get and understand. Third-party libraries, in addition to things like Xamarin, which Xamarin is built on an open source.
Hi folks, this is Adrian. Sorry about this, but we had some technical difficulties. The capture device that was hooked to the camera failed, and so the slides kept going. However, we didn't capture Jerod's voice or any of his motion. Motion and voice starts back up again. Unfortunately, it's not until about 44 minutes and 20 seconds in. So my apologies. I decided to leave this section in just in case of something in the slide that you want to see. But if you want to get back to the audio, I'm afraid you have to skip ahead to 44 minutes and, well, let's say about 19 seconds. Thank you very much.
What I found, my favorite proxy to use is Charles. Charles is rock simple with mobile. It's what, like $30, so it's also ridiculously cheap. You can try Burp. I know they've got the proxy baked into the Burp suite. I've not used it for mobile, but it might at least, the two will give you HTTP, right, HTTPS proxies. If you want a full TCP proxy, Intrepidus Group has developed Mallory. Does anybody use Mallory? Then, yeah, at some point, I gotta get your contact info before we leave, because first couple of times I tried Mallory, I just
when he was willing
that's just
to
my
use,
patience, right? I found a tool that worked for me and made the switch, but Mallory gives you absolutely everything the app is sending, even if it's outside of the HTTP protocol. Doing some client work,
Another tool that I
came across
think,
something very similar.
if you have an iOS
And as I
app,
dug deeper,
absolutely
because in
should
the
try this
client
out.
gig, I had more time to
love you guys
actually
over Veritone.
dig into details. I
It's
found
hard
out that
to
in the mobile
imagine
app
the copy
space,
guy wrote it.
at
But
like
that he
disaster
was
recovery
doing
and
iOS app work, and when you do analysis of an
I'm
iOS
saying
application,
people can get to our source code, but you can't articulate it in that risk management language,
It's much more
then it's likely to fall by the wayside while they focus on the things that they already get and understand.
application.
Third-party
There's a
libraries,
concept called
in addition to
source
things like
code.
Xamarin, which Xamarin is built on an
You run
an app on a jailbroken iOS device in parallel to the application you're analyzing. And as the app you're analyzing makes local system calls, right, or interacts with the device, this other app is able to pull information about that those local calls. So it's not web traffic, but in my mind, it's still traffic of some sort. So if you've not jailbroken an iPhone, just to give you a crash course, right? Jailbreak the phone, it installs a Cydia repository, and through Cydia you can find all these other apps that aren't published in the App Store. And you have to pull the apps down and try to get them installed and working on your phone. And just, you know, if you do any, you spend time in Linux, you understand dependencies, right? It's not the next finish with a Windows app. You know, sometimes you pull an app down and you'll find that it doesn't work unless you have another component, and you have to find the component that supports that component. And a 5-minute install ends up taking 3 hours. But when you're done, it sings, and it's pretty fantastic. The utilities here on the right are the utilities that the developer of Vericode found to be the most useful when he was doing iOS app analysis. OTool, dump decrypted, SQLite Theos, keychain dumper, which I have to be careful about what demos I show you because it displays on my wireless passwords. File, POUtil, and class dumpseed. So when you, I think file you'll have when you install Cydia, maybe. But everything else you have to go find, and you have to install and put on your device. And when this requires a jailbroken iOS device. So again, some kind of lab device set aside specifically for this purpose. You install all of these utilities through Cydia. And then when you install IRET, iOS Reverse Engineering Toolkit, it interacts with each of those utilities to do that app analysis and then presents that information to you through a web interface to a device on the same network. So I do my analysis on this guy right here. And I might be able to show you, I'll see time-wise if I can get VNC working on the wireless here to do it. But I have Iris, it's got a little toolbox icon. You open up IRET and you click it once, and it's only got 2 functions, start and stop. And when you click start, it starts a web server on your device listening on port 5555. And then you connect to your mobile device to that web server from another device on the same wireless network. And then you can go through all the screens. And I do want to show you, where do I have it? Here. Nope. No, that's George's. Here. So Vericode has a couple of write-ups on it. It's a .deb file that you can pull down and toy around with. But when you pull the web interface up, this is what it looks like, right? It verifies, number one, whether or not you've installed and configured all the supporting tools in the left screen, and then in the right screen it shows you all the apps that you can analyze using this tool. What I found with with Keychain Dumper, right, when I bring it up, is nature of the beast. Any wireless network that's been saved in memory to the device, you get a plain text string of the wireless password back. So Keychain Dumper is one of my favorites. But you'll get insight into an iOS application that you wouldn't otherwise have. And again, the utility is free. It takes a little bit of a learning curve, but it's pretty gradual, not steep at all. The last piece here, I want to get to source code here in a minute, but I wanted to touch on this real quickly. If you're deploying apps to corporate devices, I want to flip this around. You are going to have apps that you are bringing down into your organization that may have been developed by somebody who has no idea what they should be doing when it comes to AppSec. I've talked to organizations who just wanted to know what kind of questions should we be asking. You know, can we put a checklist together to say an app has to meet all these criteria before we'll allow it to be installed on a corporate device? In the iOS space, if you just go into settings and pull around, there's only so many features that are exposed to end users, but you can go through each one of these and say, corporate standard, do I have a requirement for encrypted communications? Well, if you have somebody who runs that Wireshark test I just showed you, you'll be able to see whether or not the app is sending data encrypted, unencrypted. So even though you don't control a Dropbox or you don't control a PayPal, you can go in and look at the network traffic and make a decision as to whether or not that's okay for your device. Encrypted storage, you might have to jailbreak and toy around with. UUID, analytics and ad services. You've probably seen this, a common attack vector. If I can't get to you directly, then I might try to get to you by compromising an ad service that's popping up in your mobile apps. We've seen this in the web space. I actually, in one of my previous jobs, had to deal with an infected machine. A guy's machine kept getting infected almost like a weekly basis. He was an overseas developer who was on site at the company I was with. And the LAN support manager just came out livid and said, I'm done. My guys are not spending any more time on this guy's laptop. I have no idea what he's doing, but he's clearly not doing his job because he's coming back every week infected with malware. So he's doing something inappropriate. We're not fixing it here. It's security's problem now. And I sat down with my guys and we did our analysis, right, to find out what was going on and what was happening. He was going to a news site, the developer was, back home just to keep up with what was actually happening with friends and family and, you know, where he was from. And that website was serving up ads from a third party. And that third-party ad service every once in a while would pop up a drive-by that his browser was vulnerable to. So even though the site he was going to was legit, that third-party ad service wasn't, or they had been compromised. And that's where the malware was coming in. And we've seen that attack migrate over to the mobile space, that developers are publishing apps to the App Store, and they're counting on the ad revenue in order to make a little bit of cash on the apps that they're publishing. And attackers are going after these mobile ad services and compromising them so that you can, through that, compromise all of the end users. So you may have a corporate policy that says, look, if the app has ad services, it can't be on our device because that's a risk we don't want to manage. Location services and data sharing capabilities, two others that folks can go in and check. And then both Android and iOS. If an app needs access to any of the local device resources, does it really need that access? Address, calendar, reminders, photos, those are all the Apple. Microphones, social media services, right? Can the app post to Twitter and Facebook? This isn't that it's a checklist that you say no to all of these things. The recommendation I make is that you go back internally and say, do we care about the apps that people are downloading and installing on corporate devices? And do we have any hard lines about what the apps are not allowed to do? You can test this out in a lab environment where you just have people install the apps and play around with them. A couple of tools that I actually use when I'm vetting apps, Clueful, which is Bitdefender. I think it's one of their products. It's more of a privacy analyzer. So what I was talking about, the Watchdog project from Via Forensics, it's kind of like that, only a little lighter, not as much teeth. But it does give you insight, especially into stuff like UUID and encrypted storage. I don't know if it's in the Apple store. I think Apple pulled it at some point. It's still in the Android store, and you might be able to find an older IPA and install it on a jailbroken iPhone directly. But you can use anti-malware utilities like Malwarebytes, Lookout, Those are just a couple that I like, but in the Android space, there's a lot. And then Via Protect is an app from Via Forensics that gives you, it's kind of cool, it actually goes into the device and runs a net stack command and then tells you all the connections and then does a geolocation, like an IP tracking to show you that your device is talking to servers in these countries around the world. And then My Permissions, you actually have to sign up for that one. I haven't used it, but just because I haven't made an account yet. But you might get some insight there into iOS as well.
Lookout's the only one that I've seen as a group that's open to like the HackerOne program. Lookout checks that out. So like, that would be something very interesting to see.
It's a good point. I use Lookout personally just because it was the first one I found, and so they've always done right by me. It's been kind of handy. But no, that's all I have to look into that as well. But this is, again, just a short list of a couple of tools you could use to support that process. And then at the very end, like I mentioned, if I find links directly to resources, then I want to make sure you have them as well. SQLite database browser is a project out on SourceForge. Depending, as we get away from some of the older versions of iOS, we don't have some of the same conflicts we have. I've used a few SQLite utilities over time, and depending on which version the iOS device was running, I had some conflicts in the 3.4 and then into the 4.5. But SQLite database browser seems to be a little more ubiquitous. It does a better job. iPhone Backup Analyzer. Who's used this one? I use this one in all the mobile classes. That's Dan, which again I appreciate. He made sure I could be first one to go this morning up here speaking, because as soon as I'm done, I'm leaving for Canada for a few days. Family trip, and then we're actually going to teach a class. I'm teaching a class on mobile up there.
So my bio was accurate.
It was uncanny, and the knitting, because iPhone Backup Analyzer has a Windows port, and it's there we go. My alarm telling me to shut up right on time. iPhone Backup Analyzer has a Windows app, and then it's baked into, what is it? Mobisec or Santoku or both. A couple of Linux distros that I want to point you to that you can use for mobile app and mobile device analysis. If you take iPhone Backup Analyzer and point it to an unencrypted backup directory, it does all the analysis for you and tells you what information you're going to care about. It pulls back pictures, contact info. It's got it renders the SQLite database tables, so you can just browse through the tables. It's an incredibly useful little utility, and it helps you also educate users that it's not just on device that we have to worry about, but it's the backups. A couple of links to iOS Reverse Engineering Toolkit. AXML Printer 2 is a command line utility that will take like the Android manifest XML, because it's a binary file. It just plain text converts it. Real simple. You mentioned Android Developers Toolkit. I'm going to bring that up. You can pull that down here. It's a version of Eclipse specifically designed for toying around with Android apps. And then Dex to Jar, which I love, and then JD GUI Java decompiler. Take the jar file you get from an APK file, flip it back to the source code, and then display the source code on screen. So those are, and then the last steps. My contact info is here at the end of the slide, but here in the time I have left, let me bring up this guy. So this is the ADT, and to keep from straining my neck, I think I'm going to flip the monitors here real quick. Let's do that. Excellent. I'm going to burn through this pretty quick this morning, but if you want to spend time on your own, I put together this step-by-step guide to decompiling Android apps. I'm big on process. I'm big on the step-by-step, because if I'm working a gig and Dan, I want to throw him some mobile app work, I want him to be able to do the same thing that I do, so I break everything down as detailed as I can. APK Extractor is an app you can pull down from Google Play, and install it on any Android device. This is the app that will look for the file, look for the app on your device, flip it back to the APK format, and then send it wherever you want to send it. So what I usually do is I take the app, APK extractor, pull down my target app, and then I send APK extractor to my laptop through Dropbox. And then the three tools you'll need, Eclipse ADT, Dex2Jar, and JD GUI. I've got links here. Put those on your laptop. And let me take a look. I think we had downloads. Oh, look at that. Bank of America. Apologies to anybody from Bank of America. So what I'm going to do is file new Java project. Actually, and I'm just going to name it. I'll call it VOA. Yep, that's good. So now I have my Bank of America project. I'm going to right click. Where is it? Configure build path. There it is. Build path, configure build path. And on the Libraries tab, you want to add external jars. And what I've done, this Dex2Jar link that I pointed out, when you unzip that file, you get all the libraries. So I just want to tell ADT, bring all those libraries in. And then click OK. Now I want to take the APK file that I just downloaded and just drop it in there and make a copy. And now you can see I've got, I think that's the APK file itself. So now I'm going to right click on the project, run as, run configurations. And you need this string exactly, com.googlecode.dex2jar v3 main. I've got that right here on the main class. And when you pop over to the arguments tab, you need to actually put the APK file name exactly as it appears. So there's desktop. There we go. Do a quick rename. Copy that over. Also, I'm going to save you guys the 4 hours that I lost when I ran into this. Spaces matter. So when you bring that file in, make sure you put it in double quotes. Otherwise, it craps out. Now I'm going to click Run. And this, oh no. What? Demo gods are not with me today, guys. So the Dex2Jar, sorry. Yeah, I don't know what threw that for a loop. Let me check something real quick. There's a workspace directory. There's my VOA. No. Jar file. Click. No dice. Well, normally that works, so maybe we're not going to get to see Bank of America. So anybody watching this presentation after can't come after me and scold me. But when I go through the process, what was it, set main class, click run, I get a jar file. Unfortunately, I brought a couple up here that I can show you. What it's going to create is it's going to kick out a dex2jar.jar file, which is the, again, the reverse encrypted file. And I've got an app. I like this one. There's a couple of others you can toy with. The JD GUI. that you can take the app and bring that dex to jar file in when it gets kicked out. And what you'll see here, this kind of garbage tells me that they've actually done a good job of obfuscating the code. I think. What do we have? So as you start just diving into the app, the dex to jar file, you'll, in a lot of cases, be able to get to that source code and start pulling info out. God, now I'm going to be, see, now I can't say boom today. I was so excited to be able to say boom when I got to source code. I have to toy around with that. So, again, let me bring this up. Is that it? Best way to get a hold of me is LinkedIn or Twitter, although I've been a little crazy on the work schedule-wise lately, so I'm a little absent from social media. The contact@jacadis.com is the company email if you want to email me directly. First initial, last name, jbrennen@jacadis.com. I'm right at the 10 o'clock hour. And I'm going to sit down and take a look at that, guys, but I don't want to do it here. Any questions, anything you wanted to dig into deeper about what I covered? So I know we've got one person in the room who does mobile app work. Anybody else toyed around with it yet? Have you had any other utilities that you've tried out?
Just tools that I built myself.
Nice. Fair enough. All right, not going to press further. Yeah.
I've been working with some decompiling on the Microsoft side, especially with the C# and stuff. So the Xamarin DLLs there's several very good free tools out there that reverse engineer the C# or whatever code that they use.
This is my favorite. .peek from JetBrains. If you get to a point where you're looking at either Windows apps or like Xamarin apps that they start in .NET before they get ported over, pulling DLLs apart with .peek is rock simple. What are some of the other ones you've used?
Telerik is a very popular .NET tool set, and they put out some free tools as sort of tasty treats that are free to download before you actually spend money. And I found that they were very high quality. But Telerik, as far as third-party applications support, is pretty good. But they have a free .NET decompiler available on their website.
That's good to know. I'm gonna have to come check them out too. Oh, those are the Kendo guys.
Yeah.
I didn't make that. Kendo was one of the sponsors. So Telerik would have been at the mobile conference in Columbus.
Yep.
That's good to know. Yes.
Jerod, you could mention the Linux distro.
Oh yeah, sorry. Thank you. So with the two distros, and I thought this was funny. The guys over at Professional Evil, right? The Secure Ideas, right? They have Mobisec, which is the distro that SANS uses as part of the mobile app class that they've just started teaching. It's got a lot of tools baked in, but it's Ubuntu Linux, so some of the tools like was the iOS configuration utility. They don't run native in Linux. So the way the distro is built out, it's very much meant to be a teaching distro. You can either run tools directly within the Linux VM, or they link out to tools that you'll need to run on a separate platform. But they've got a fairly broad, a fairly robust tool set. They've got all the management platforms, some of the, what do I want to say, like the virtualization platforms for testing different devices. I like Mobisec a lot, and when I teach classes on mobile, I usually go to Mobisec as my go-to distro. When I published that step-by-step guide, I put it out on Reddit to help people find it, and the guys from Via Forensics found it. And then Andrew called me and said, Jerod, why aren't you pimping our distro? And I'm like, I like your distro. It's just they're two very different purposes. There's from Via Forensics, they publish Santoku Linux. Santoku, 3 uses. It's designed initially to be like a forensics tool. It also does mobile malware analysis. So it's got some tools baked in that you can use for that purpose. But via forensics space, they totally rock the mobile forensics side. I mean, some of the stories I've heard from them, from what they're doing, and some of the conversations I've had even with the digital forensics company that we partner with. I don't know anybody who's doing it better than VIA right now in the mobile space. So you can pull either one of these down. If you're doing attack and pen of mobile devices, Georgia's smartphone pen test framework is pretty slick. It's I think it might be baked into the MobiSec distro even, that if you pull MobiSec down, it may have SPF installed. I don't know if that's current or not. But if you're doing any work in mobile AppSec, I've got the tools that I'll use from my laptop here, but when I want to go into a VM, these are the two that I've had the most success with. I'm at 10:08. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Do you ever use IDA Pro for any of this general purpose?
You know, actually, I was here at one of the OISF meetings, and who was it? He's a guy who you asked if you could video him, and he said no. I can't remember. It was a great presentation.
Chris Eagle, probably.
Chris Eagle was already in videos last year.
Yeah, so somebody. I don't use IDA Pro a lot. I mean, that's a step further than I get. By the time I get this information out for my clients, they say that's more than I can keep up with. Thanks, and then I get pulled into another project.
William Kimball.
Sorry.
William Kimball. Yeah, that's what a couple years ago. Malware stuff with IDA Pro.
Could have been it. There was one that was talking about like showing how copy protection worked. I think if you remember that, but I've not used IDA Pro, not in this space. I think you might even be able to get more. Once you get down to the, you wouldn't even need the source code at that point. That's for somebody smarter than me to get down to that level of detail, but no, it's a good tool.
You can use something called backsmolly to go along with Dexajar to get similar assembly.
Got it.
That's very easy to read.
That's a good point. That's in the, I referenced that in my first presentation, but these are tools I know people are using. I haven't used them myself. Well, folks, I'll be around for a few minutes if you want to catch me on the side. If not, follow up with me online. I'll answer questions. If I can figure out why that BOA app, or how about this? Here's your challenge. Go ahead and pull down the BOA app and see what you can get to. Hopefully when you get in, you'll find that they've obfuscated the code. I would have to think, an organization that big, that they've taken time to do a little AppSec. But hit that step-by-step up on the blog. Go through it and see if you can get it to work. That's the first time I've had it fail for me, and I don't know why. But anyway, thanks a lot for having me this morning. Appreciate it.